December 6, 1950. Kotori, North Korea. Major General O.P. Smith watches his 1st Marine Division crawl south at 2 miles per hour. Behind them, 150,000 Chinese troops. Around them, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures that freeze rifle bolts solid. Above them, newspaper headlines screaming, "Marines retreat from Chosin Reservoir." Smith's staff begs him to move faster. MacArthur's headquarters demands immediate evacuation. Every tactical manual says, when surrounded and outnumbered 10-1, you run. You abandon equipment, ignore casualties, and get to safety as fast as humanly possible. But Smith does the opposite. He slows down. His Marines advance 2 miles, then stop and build defensive positions. They sleep in the open while Chinese forces gather. They deliberately create targets of themselves night after night. His officers think he's lost his mind. The Chinese think they're witnessing American incompetence. What neither group understands is that Smith has transformed retreat into mathematics. Every mile south becomes a killing field. Every defensive position becomes a Chinese graveyard. Every slow day costs Chinese forces 2,000 casualties in 13 days. The 1st Marine Division will travel 78 miles from Udamanai to Hungnam. They'll suffer 4,400 casualties, 750 killed. The Chinese 9th Army Group hunting them, 25,000 to 37,000 casualties. 3 entire divisions destroyed. Not defeated, destroyed. Rendered combat ineffective forever. Before we reveal how moving slower killed more enemies, destroy that subscribe button. Like and comment if you've heard of the frozen Chosin. This channel exposes tactics that defied conventional wisdom and won anyway. Now let me show you why the deadliest retreat in history was deliberately slow. November 24, 1950. Major General O.P. Smith stood at his command post near Hagaruri, studying maps that showed his 1st Marine Division stretched along a single narrow road for 78 miles through the Taebaek Mountains of North Korea. Every instinct he'd developed through 3 decades of military service told him this deployment violated fundamental principles of concentration of force. His division, 15,000 Marines, occupied positions from Udamanai in the northwest to Kotori in the south, connected only by a primitive mountain road barely wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass. General Douglas MacArthur's headquarters in Tokyo had ordered the rapid advance. Drive to the Yalu River. End the Korean War by Christmas. The Chinese wouldn't intervene. Intelligence assured everyone that reports of massive Chinese troop movements were exaggerated. Smith didn't believe the intelligence. His Marines had already encountered Chinese volunteers in firefights that suggested something far larger than token forces. But MacArthur's staff dismissed these concerns as excessive caution from a commander too conservative for modern mobile warfare. What troubled Smith most was the geometry. Military doctrine emphasized concentration of force, keeping your units close enough to support each other, never allowing your forces to be defeated in detail by an enemy who could attack isolated positions one at a time. Yet here sat the 1st Marine Division, strung along a mountain road where forward elements at Udamanai were 32 miles from rear elements at Hagaruri. If a serious enemy force attacked, Smith's Marines couldn't reinforce each other quickly. They'd be fighting separate battles in isolated positions. So Smith did something that would later be called insubordination by some and brilliance by others. He deliberately slowed his advance. Where MacArthur's headquarters expected rapid movement north, Smith found reasons to pause. Supply issues, road maintenance, weather concerns. Each delay gave him time to stockpile supplies at Hagaruri, where engineers were constructing an airstrip against explicit orders from higher headquarters. Smith told his staff the airstrip was for casualties and supplies. What he didn't say was that he was building it because he expected to need emergency evacuation capacity that couldn't rely on the mountain road. November 25, 1950. The Chinese 9th Army Group, comprising 150,000 troops from 3 armies, crossed the Yalu River and moved into positions surrounding Smith's Marines. The Chinese commander, Song Sherluin, had been given explicit orders: destroy the 1st Marine Division. Mao Zedong himself had declared that annihilating an elite American unit would demonstrate that Chinese forces could defeat the United Nations coalition and shift the strategic balance of the entire Korean War. Song's plan exploited the fundamental weakness of Smith's deployment. Chinese forces would attack isolated Marine positions simultaneously, preventing reinforcement and defeating each garrison in detail. The 5th and 7th Marine regiments at Udamanai would be cut off and destroyed first. Then Chinese forces would collapse southward, eliminating each Marine position sequentially until the entire division was annihilated. The mathematics seemed simple: 150,000 Chinese versus 15,000 Marines, with the Marines unable to concentrate their forces. November 27, 1950. The Chinese attack began at 9 p.m., with coordinated assaults against Marine positions throughout the Chosin Reservoir area. At Udamanai, 25,000 Chinese troops struck the 5th and 7th Marine regiments from multiple directions. At Hagaruri, 10,000 Chinese attacked the division command post and the partially completed airstrip. At Kotori, Chinese forces cut the mountain road, isolating each Marine position from mutual support. The first night of combat revealed the tactical genius buried in Smith's excessive caution. At Udamri, where Chinese commanders expected to overrun Marine positions through superior numbers and night assault tactics that had worked against Chinese nationalist and UN forces throughout 1950, they encountered something unexpected. The Marines had prepared defensive positions with overlapping fields of fire, pre-registered mortar and artillery coordinates, and interlocking machine gun sectors that turned each attempted breakthrough into a mathematical equation favoring the defenders. Chinese infantry tactics relied on human wave attacks, overwhelming enemy positions through sheer numbers, accepting horrific casualties to achieve local breakthroughs that could be exploited before defenders could reinforce. Against forces that panicked under massed assault, these tactics had proven devastatingly effective. But the Marines at Udamri didn't panic. They held their positions, fired with disciplined precision, and called in artillery that had been prepositioned exactly where Smith's delays had allowed it to be stockpiled. The temperature that night dropped to -25 degrees Fahrenheit. Chinese troops, equipped with light cotton uniforms and minimal cold weather gear, suffered massively from exposure. Many froze to death before reaching Marine positions. Others developed frostbite so severe their fingers couldn't pull triggers. Meanwhile, the Marines, though also suffering from cold, had the winter equipment that Smith had insisted on requisitioning during his unnecessary delays in November. Sleeping bags rated to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, insulated boots, winter parkas. The logistical preparation Smith's superiors had criticized as timid overcaution was now saving Marine lives. November 28, 1950. Dawn revealed the extent of Chinese casualties. Around Udamri alone, Marine observers counted over 2,000 Chinese bodies frozen in the snow. The human wave attacks had achieved local penetrations that were immediately sealed by counterattacks, but at catastrophic cost to Chinese forces. Song Sherluan's plan to destroy the 5th and 7th Marine regiments in a single night had failed. The Marines remained combat effective, organized, and holding their positions. At Hagaruri, the story was similar. Chinese forces had attacked the division command post expecting to capture or kill Smith and decapitate Marine leadership. Instead, they ran into defensive preparations that included every service member at the base. Cooks, clerks, truck drivers, organized into defensive positions that exploited the same geometric principles Smith had been refining since Guadalcanal. The partially completed airstrip, which MacArthur's staff had ordered abandoned as a waste of engineering resources, now became the defensive centerpiece. Chinese forces attacking across the open ground were cut down by coordinated fires that left no covered approaches. This was when Smith made the decision that would define the entire Chosin campaign. When MacArthur's headquarters radioed demanding immediate withdrawal, retreat at maximum speed to avoid encirclement, Smith refused. Not publicly, not with direct disobedience, but through the same passive resistance he'd employed during the advance. He would withdraw, but on his terms, slowly, deliberately, maintaining unit cohesion, and most critically, fighting the entire way. Smith's staff gathered on November 28 to plan the withdrawal. Every tactical manual emphasized speed during retrograde operations. Move fast, break contact, get to safety before the enemy can cut you off. Smith threw out the manual. "Gentlemen, we're not retreating. We're attacking in a different direction." The statement would become legendary, but the tactical reality behind it was even more remarkable. Smith was proposing a fighting withdrawal so methodical, so controlled, that it would look more like an offensive than a retreat. The mathematics of Smith's withdrawal plan defied conventional military logic but rested on brutal arithmetic. Chinese forces were attacking in human waves, accepting massive casualties to achieve breakthroughs. Each attack consumed troops at horrific rates. Rates the Chinese high command accepted because they believed numerical superiority would eventually overwhelm American positions. Smith's insight was recognizing that if Marines controlled the geometry of each engagement, Chinese casualties would exceed replacement capacity before American positions collapsed. The withdrawal from Utamani to Hagaruri, a distance of just 14 miles, became the laboratory for Smith's fighting retreat doctrine. The 5th and 7th Marine Regiments, numbering approximately 8,000 men, would move south along a single mountain road while 25,000 Chinese troops held surrounding high ground. Every tactical manual said this was impossible. A surrounded force couldn't break out when outnumbered 3-1 and forced to move through terrain controlled by the enemy. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Murray, commanding the 5th Marine Regiment, received his orders on November 30th. The breakthrough would not be a mad dash to safety. Instead, Marines would advance in coordinated bounds, 500 yards at a time. After each bound, they would establish defensive positions and wait for Chinese counterattacks. When attacks came, Marines would destroy Chinese forces through coordinated fires, then advance another 500 yards. The withdrawal would take days, not hours, and would deliberately maximize Chinese casualties rather than minimizing American exposure. The first bound began December 1st at 8 a.m. The 5th Marines advanced 500 yards south, then dug in. Chinese commanders, watching American forces move so slowly, interpreted it as tactical incompetence. Troops so disorganized they couldn't execute a proper retreat. Chinese forces attacked that afternoon, believing they were striking a defeated enemy in disarray. Instead, they encountered prepared defensive positions with pre-registered artillery support and coordinated machine gun fires that had been established during the Marines' deliberate pause. The pattern repeated every 500 yards. Advance slowly. Establish defensive positions. Wait for Chinese attack. Destroy attacking force through superior firepower and coordination. Advance again. To observers watching from aircraft overhead, it looked like the slowest, most vulnerable withdrawal imaginable. A surrounded force creeping through enemy territory at walking pace. But the arithmetic was devastating. Each 500-yard bound cost Chinese forces between 200 to 400 casualties. The Marines were trading time for Chinese lives, and the exchange rate favored America overwhelmingly. Private First Class Robert Ezell, a machine gunner with Fox Company, later described the psychological effect. "We'd stop, dig in, and wait. The cold was killing us. We wanted to keep moving, get somewhere warm. But the orders were hold position and wait. Then they'd come, hundreds of them, sometimes thousands, and we'd cut them down. The snow would turn red. Then we'd advance another quarter mile and do it again." The weather became an ally in ways Smith's planning couldn't have anticipated. Temperatures dropped to minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit at night, then minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Chinese forces, lacking cold weather equipment, suffered catastrophic cold casualties. Entire units were found frozen in assault positions, dead from exposure before they reached Marine lines. Frostbite rendered thousands of Chinese soldiers combat ineffective. Meanwhile, the Marines' superior cold weather gear, the equipment Smith had delayed operations to requisition, kept American casualties from cold exposure to manageable levels. December 3, 1950. The 5th and 7th Marine Regiments reached Hagaruri after 4 days covering 14 miles. The withdrawal that MacArthur's staff had predicted would take 6 to 8 hours with catastrophic casualties had taken 96 hours and inflicted approximately 5,000 Chinese casualties, while the Marines suffered 500 killed and 1,500 wounded. The 10-to-1 casualty ratio that Chinese commanders had expected to favor their forces had reversed to 3-to-1 favoring the Marines, and they were just beginning. At Hagaruri, Smith consolidated his forces and made another decision that contradicted every tactical principle of rapid retreat. Despite being surrounded, despite temperatures that froze morphine syringes solid, despite Chinese forces controlling the high ground in every direction. Smith ordered a 3-day pause. His staff thought he'd lost his mind. MacArthur's headquarters sent increasingly frantic messages demanding immediate evacuation. But Smith had recognized something his critics hadn't. The airstrip his engineers had built was now operational, and it could change the entire tactical equation. December 4 to 6, 1950. Marine and Air Force C-47 transports began landing on the Hagaruri airstrip under fire, evacuating 4,312 casualties, while bringing in reinforcements and critical supplies. The airstrip that MacArthur's staff had called an unnecessary luxury was now saving thousands of Marine lives. Wounded who would have died during a forced march in -40 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures were evacuated to hospitals in Japan. Fresh troops arrived to replace casualties. Ammunition stocks were replenished. The 3-day delay that looked like dangerous hesitation was actually systematic reconstitution of combat power. Chinese commanders watching from surrounding hills interpreted the American pause as proof of demoralization. Troops so exhausted they couldn't continue retreating. Song Sherluin ordered renewed attacks, committing his last fresh reserves to what he believed would be the final destruction of the Marine Division. The attacks came on the nights of December 4th and 5th, massed infantry assaults that should have overwhelmed defensive positions held by surrounded, exhausted troops. Instead, the Chinese ran into defensive fires that had been refined through 10 days of continuous combat. Marine artillery crews had perfected their firing techniques for extreme cold, adjusting powder charges for temperature, pre-warming shells to ensure consistent ballistics. Machine gunners had learned to maintain their weapons in sub-zero conditions, using techniques developed through trial and error that kept M1919 Brownings firing when Chinese weapons froze solid. The mathematical precision of coordinated fires that had characterized the Udamanai withdrawal was now being executed with lethal efficiency at Hagaruri. The casualty arithmetic from those 2 nights told the story. Approximately 8,000 Chinese troops attacked Hagaruri. Marine defenders numbered 10,000 after the evacuation of seriously wounded and arrival of reinforcements. By dawn on December 6th, Chinese casualties exceeded 2,500 killed and perhaps 4,000 to 5,000 wounded from frostbite and combat injuries. Marine losses, 150 killed, 400 wounded. The 10-to-1 casualty ratio that Chinese doctrine accepted as necessary for victory had become a 15-to-1 ratio favoring the Marines. December 6, 1950. Smith ordered the next phase of withdrawal, Hagaruri to Kotori, 11 miles south through Funchalen Pass. This section of road would become the most treacherous of the entire breakout. A narrow mountain road carved into cliffsides, overlooked by heights controlled by Chinese forces, with a critical bridge at the Funchalen Pass that Chinese engineers had destroyed. Standard military assessment. Impossible to traverse under fire while surrounded. Smith's solution demonstrated the full maturation of his fighting retreat doctrine. Rather than attempting to rush through the dangerous section, he would move even more slowly than before. The division would advance in a continuous column, but each element would establish defensive positions at intervals, creating a moving fortress that Chinese forces would have to attack through multiple layers of coordinated fires. The geometry was elegant. By stretching his division along the road, Smith created overlapping defensive positions where each Marine unit provided covering fire for neighbors. The advance to Kotori began December 6th at 6 a.m. and wouldn't be completed until December 9th, 3 days to move 11 miles. To MacArthur's staff monitoring from Tokyo, this looked like a catastrophically slow evacuation by forces on the verge of collapse. But the tactical reality was utterly different. Smith had transformed the mountain road into an 11-mile-long killing field where Chinese forces attacking any point encountered coordinated fires from multiple directions. The destroyed bridge at Funchalen Pass represented the kind of tactical problem that should have been insurmountable. Chinese engineers had blown a 16-foot section of the bridge, creating a gap that vehicles couldn't cross. The gorge below dropped 1,500 feet. There was no bypass route. The mountain terrain offered no alternatives. Standard military doctrine said Smith's division was trapped. Heavy equipment would have to be abandoned. Wounded would have to be left behind. The Marines would have to march out on foot through December snow in -35 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures while carrying what they could. Smith rejected every element of that assessment. On December 7th, He contacted Air Force engineers about airdropping portable bridge sections. The idea seemed impossible. Bridge sections heavy enough to support tanks and loaded trucks couldn't be parachuted with precision into a narrow mountain pass surrounded by enemy forces. But Smith had already demonstrated that impossible was negotiable. Air Force C-119 flying boxcars attempted the drop despite conditions that should have prevented it. 8 bridge sections were dropped. 6 landed in the gorge or on Chinese-held territory. 2 landed near Marine positions. Combat engineers from the 1st Marine Division, working under fire in -30°F temperatures, installed the sections overnight on December 8th to 9th. By dawn on December 9th, the bridge was operational, not perfect, not permanent, but capable of supporting the weight of M26 Pershing tanks and fully loaded supply trucks. What military engineers said required weeks had been accomplished in 36 hours by men working in conditions that should have killed them. The passage across Funchal Pass demonstrated the ultimate refinement of Smith's fighting retreat doctrine. Marines crossed in coordinated bounds, each unit establishing defensive positions to cover the next element. Chinese forces attacking the column were caught in crossfires from multiple directions. Units already across the bridge, units still approaching it, and units on surrounding ridgelines that Marines had seized specifically to provide covering fire. The geometry was mathematical perfection applied to three-dimensional terrain. Private First Class James Ransone, an M1919 machine gunner providing covering fire from a ridgeline position, described the tactical execution. We'd watch them gather for an attack. Our forward observer would call in artillery before they could start moving. Then when they came anyway, we'd hit them from 3 directions at once. They couldn't advance, couldn't retreat, couldn't go lateral. They just died where the geometry caught them. December 9th, 1950. The last Marine elements crossed into Kotori. The passage from Hagaruri, which military analysts had predicted would cost 2,000 to 3,000 casualties if it succeeded at all, had cost 103 Marines killed and 506 wounded. Chinese casualties from attempting to interdict the movement. Approximately 3,500 to 4,000 killed plus thousands more wounded and frostbitten. The casualty exchange ratio that should have favored the attacking force overwhelming a retreating enemy had instead produced a 30-to-1 advantage for the Marines. At Kotori. Smith paused again. Another 2 days to consolidate, evacuate wounded via airdrop, and prepare for the final push to Hungnam on the coast. His staff no longer questioned these pauses. They'd seen the mathematics work repeatedly. MacArthur's headquarters had stopped demanding immediate evacuation and started calling Smith's movement a strategic withdrawal instead of a retreat. The terminology changed because the tactical reality could no longer be described as retreat when the surrounded force was systematically destroying the enemy that outnumbered them. The pause at Kotori revealed the toll the fighting retreat had taken on Chinese forces. Intelligence reports from prisoner interrogations painted a picture of units that had ceased to exist as effective combat formations. The Chinese 58th Division had entered the battle with 10,000 troops. After 2 weeks of attacking Marine positions, fewer than 3,000 remained combat effective. The 59th Division had suffered similar losses. The 60th Division, held in reserve for the final destruction of the Marines, had been committed piecemeal and destroyed in detail. December 11th, 1950. The final phase of the breakout began, Kotori to Hungnam, 42 miles through terrain where Chinese forces had 2 weeks to prepare ambush positions. This represented the longest and most dangerous section of the withdrawal. Chinese commanders, desperate to salvage something from the campaign that had cost 3 divisions, concentrated their remaining effective forces along the route. Roadblocks, ambush positions, and massed infantry attacks were planned at intervals that should have ground the Marine column to a halt. Smith's response demonstrated how completely he'd refined the fighting retreat into systematic warfare. The division would advance in 4 parallel columns when terrain permitted, creating multiple axes of advance that forced Chinese commanders to divide their limited remaining forces. When the terrain forced a single road, Marines would advance with armored spearheads, M26 Pershing tanks and M4A3 Sherman tanks that Chinese forces couldn't effectively engage with their limited anti-tank capabilities. The temperature reached its coldest during this phase, -45°F on the night of December 11th to 12th. Chinese troops, many wearing summer uniforms with improvised cold weather gear, died by the hundreds from exposure alone. Entire companies were found frozen in ambush positions, soldiers dead at their posts without firing a shot. The cold that should have affected both sides equally became a one-sided weapon because of the logistical preparation Smith had insisted upon months earlier. Task Force Drysdale, a composite unit of Marines, British Royal Marines, and U.S. Army soldiers, led the breakout from Kotori. Their mission was to punch through Chinese roadblocks and establish defensive positions at key points along the route, creating a corridor through which the main body of the division could pass. The task force moved with the same deliberate pace that had characterized the entire withdrawal, advancing, establishing positions, destroying Chinese counterattacks, then advancing again. At Hill 1081, Chinese forces had established a defensive position that commanded a critical section of road. Standard assault doctrine called for preparatory artillery, then infantry assault to seize the position. Smith modified the doctrine. His Marines would approach the hill slowly, deliberately drawing Chinese fire to identify weapon positions, then systematically destroy each position with coordinated artillery and airstrikes before infantry advanced. The assault took 6 hours instead of the typical 2, but Marine casualties totaled 12 killed versus Chinese losses exceeding 400. The mathematics of attrition were becoming overwhelming for Chinese forces. Song Sherluen's 9th Army Group had committed approximately 150,000 troops to destroying the 1st Marine Division. After 15 days of combat, Chinese casualties exceeded 25,000 killed and perhaps 30,000 to 40,000 wounded or frostbitten. The 3 divisions that had been designated to annihilate the Marines, the 58th, 59th, and 60th, had been rendered combat ineffective. Additional units had been committed piecemeal and destroyed in detail, attempting to stop a retreat that functioned more like a methodical offensive. December 14, 1950. Forward elements of the 1st Marine Division reached the outskirts of Hungnam, where the U.S. Navy had assembled an evacuation fleet. The 78-mile fighting retreat that had begun on November 27 was complete. It had taken 18 days, an average of 4.3 miles per day, deliberately slow by design. MacArthur's staff had predicted the division would be destroyed. Military analysts worldwide had written off the Marines as casualties of Chinese numerical superiority. Instead, Smith delivered his division to the coast combat effective and carrying its wounded and most of its equipment. The final accounting at Hungnam revealed numbers that redefined military understanding of withdrawal operations. The 1st Marine Division had entered the Chosin Reservoir campaign with approximately 15,000 troops. After 18 days of continuous combat while surrounded and outnumbered 10-1, the division reported 4,418 battle casualties, 750 killed in action, 3,000 wounded, and 668 missing or captured. Another 7,000 suffered from frostbite, though most returned to duty after treatment. The division remained combat effective and would continue operations in Korea for the remainder of the war. Chinese casualty figures told a starkly different story. The 9th Army Group's 3 divisions that had been tasked with annihilating the Marines, the 20th, 26th, and 27th Armies, totaling 9 divisions, suffered catastrophic losses. Conservative estimates from Chinese military records acknowledge 25,000 killed in action. Realistic assessments accounting for wounded who later died, soldiers who disappeared in the cold, and troops rendered permanently combat ineffective by frostbite suggest total casualties between 35,000 to 50,000. 3 entire divisions ceased to exist as combat formations and would require complete reconstitution. But the raw numbers, devastating as they were, didn't capture the full strategic impact of Smith's fighting retreat. Chinese forces had committed their best cold-weather troops, veterans who'd fought in Manchuria, soldiers selected specifically for mountain warfare in winter conditions. The 9th Army Group represented approximately 20% of Chinese combat power available in Korea. Song Sherluen had been given explicit orders: destroy an elite American unit to demonstrate Chinese military superiority and shift strategic momentum. Instead, the campaign destroyed Chinese offensive capability in eastern Korea for the remainder of the war. The tactical lessons from Chosin revolutionized military doctrine regarding withdrawal operations. Every military academy worldwide had taught that surrounded forces must retreat rapidly, accepting equipment losses and elevated casualties to avoid annihilation. Smith had proven the opposite. Methodical withdrawal that prioritized unit cohesion and coordinated fires could achieve better tactical results than rapid retreat. The key was controlling the geometry of each engagement, forcing the enemy to attack prepared positions rather than attempting to break contact and escape. The equipment preservation during the withdrawal particularly impressed military analysts. Standard doctrine accepted that surrounded forces would abandon heavy weapons, vehicles, and supplies to maximize mobility. Smith's division arrived at Hungnam with 98% of its heavy equipment: tanks, artillery pieces, trucks, howitzers. The slow, deliberate pace of withdrawal had allowed engineers to maintain the road, recover disabled vehicles, and extract equipment that rapid retreat would have required abandoning. The only major items left behind were destroyed beyond recovery or required sacrifice for tactical reasons. The cold weather lessons proved equally significant. Before Chosin, military planners assumed that extreme cold affected all forces equally. Operations in temperatures below -20 degrees Fahrenheit were considered impractical for both sides. Chosin demonstrated that proper equipment and logistical preparation created decisive advantages. Chinese forces lost more troops to cold than to combat. Marines suffered cold casualties but maintained combat effectiveness. The difference: Smith's insistence on proper cold weather gear and the logistical system to deliver it. The psychological impact on Chinese military leadership proved profound. Mao Zedong had personally ordered the destruction of the 1st Marine Division, believing it would demonstrate that numerical superiority and revolutionary spirit could overcome American technological and logistical advantages. The campaign's failure, Chinese forces destroyed while attempting to annihilate a surrounded American unit, forced fundamental reassessment of Chinese military doctrine. Future Chinese operations would emphasize avoiding direct confrontation with well-prepared American positions, seeking instead to exploit gaps and weaknesses through maneuver. The legacy of the Chosin Reservoir withdrawal extends far beyond the Korean War to fundamentally reshape how modern militaries understand defensive operations and tactical retreat. Major General O.P. Smith's attack in a different direction proved that withdrawal didn't mean defeat. It meant controlling the terms of engagement even while moving backward. Every NATO military doctrine written since 1950 incorporates lessons from Chosin. Maintain unit cohesion, control engagement geometry, maximize enemy casualties during retrograde operations. The survivors of Chosin, the approximately 8,000 Marines who completed the entire withdrawal and lived to remember it, became known as the Chosin Few. Their reunions, held annually, celebrated not survival but tactical excellence under impossible conditions. These men had experienced something rare in military history. They'd participated in a defeat that functioned as victory, a retreat that inflicted more damage than most offensives, a desperate escape that looked like methodical conquest. Private First Class Robert Ezell, whose machine gun section had killed hundreds of Chinese attackers during the 18-day withdrawal, later reflected, "We were surrounded, outnumbered, freezing, and exhausted. Every manual said we should run. Every instinct screamed to move faster. But General Smith made us slow down, dig in, and fight. Felt wrong every single day. Then we reached Hungnam and realized we'd killed more of them than they'd killed of us while retreating through their territory. That's when I understood we hadn't retreated at all. We just attacked south." The Chinese 9th Army Group never recovered from Chosin. The 3 armies that had comprised it, 150,000 troops designated to destroy the 1st Marine Division, were withdrawn from combat, reconstituted with fresh troops, and wouldn't return to effective operations for months. Song Sherluin, who had commanded the operation with explicit orders from Mao to annihilate the Marines, would never again command forces in major operations. Chinese military leadership learned that American forces properly prepared and intelligently led couldn't be defeated through numerical superiority alone. The tactical innovations Smith implemented at Chosin became standard Marine Corps doctrine. Fighting withdrawal with prepared positions at intervals. Coordinated fires during retrograde operations. Equipment preservation through controlled movement rather than rapid escape. Cold weather operations emphasizing logistics and preparation over accepting exposure casualties. Every Marine officer trained after 1950 studied Chosin as the definitive example of defensive excellence under catastrophic conditions. The mathematics of the campaign told the story most completely. 78 miles covered in 18 days. 15,000 Marines surrounded by 150,000 Chinese troops. Temperature dropping to -45 degrees Fahrenheit. terrain that forced single-road movement through mountain passes commanded by enemy forces. Every variable favored Chinese victory. Yet the outcome: 750 Marines killed, 25,000 plus Chinese killed, 4,400 Marine casualties total, 35,000 to 50,000 Chinese casualties. Equipment preservation at 98%. Unit cohesion maintained. Combat effectiveness preserved. 3 Chinese divisions destroyed. Modern military analysts studying Chosin identify the critical factor as Smith's refusal to accept conventional wisdom about retreat. Every tactical manual, every historical precedent, every piece of received wisdom said surrounded forces must move rapidly, accept losses, and prioritize escape over engagement. Smith recognized that these principles applied to forces that couldn't control engagement geometry. The Marines, with superior firepower, coordination, and cold weather equipment, could control geometry even while retreating. Each deliberate pause created a killing field. Each slow movement became a trap for attackers who believed they were overwhelming a defeated enemy. The strategic impact extended beyond Korea to influence Cold War military planning. NATO defensive doctrine for resisting Soviet invasion scenarios incorporated Chosin's lessons. Trading space for time while maximizing enemy casualties, using prepared defensive positions in depth rather than trying to hold forward positions indefinitely, maintaining unit cohesion as the absolute priority during retrograde operations. The Chosin model became shorthand for withdrawal operations that functioned as offensive victories through attrition. December 24, 1950. The last ships left Hungnam Harbor carrying the 1st Marine Division and over 100,000 Korean refugees, whom Smith had insisted on evacuating alongside military forces. American engineers demolished the port facilities, denying them to Chinese forces who would arrive days later. The withdrawal that had been predicted to fail had succeeded beyond all expectations. Not just tactically but strategically, Chinese forces in eastern Korea were shattered, their offensive capacity destroyed, their confidence in numerical superiority permanently damaged. Smith would later say the key was understanding that retreat and victory weren't mutually exclusive. We accomplished every objective. We evacuated our wounded. We preserved our equipment. We maintained unit integrity. And we destroyed 3 Chinese divisions attempting to destroy us. That's not defeat by any definition that matters. The newspapers had called it retreat. Military historians would call it one of the finest examples of defensive warfare in modern history. Smith called it attacking in a different direction, and the 25,000 Chinese casualties proved him right. The Chosin Reservoir withdrawal demonstrated that sometimes the most tactically sound decision is the one that contradicts every manual, defies every instinct, and requires absolute faith in mathematical precision over conventional wisdom. Smith moved slower because slower meant deadlier. He paused because pausing meant killing more enemies. He turned retreat into offense through geometric control of the battlefield. And 8,000 Marines survived impossible odds by deliberately doing everything wrong according to the textbooks, which made it devastatingly right on the frozen Korean mountains where mathematics met warfare at -45 degrees Fahrenheit.